Radio Retro Future.
And welcome to the new panel of the Anachronistic Society, number 4, where we will discuss steampunk in mainstream society. And to introduce this panel, the intention is to discuss where steampunk is heading when it comes to society itself, not just conventions or festivals or media, but is there a place for steampunk in society as we know it today? And if so, what can we expect from that? And here I have 3 gentlemen with me, and maybe some other people will join us at some later moment. Would be nice. And our first guest here is Andy, also known as the Mad Hatter from the Netherlands. Could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Andy?
Good evening. I'm currently in the Netherlands. As you can tell from my accent, not very Dutch. Originally born in the UK, lived in Belgium, Greece, Belgium again, Germany, and now the Netherlands. And I got into steampunk about 5 years ago and have become known for my crazy hats.
Well, that's, I think, a very apt description. He is also he is probably one of the father figures of the Dutch steampunk community, if I may say so. And you can always count on him to lighten the mood or just bring you a surprise high tea or something like that. So I think we should say that. As well, we have Eric Fisk from the Fedora Chronicles and Frederic Hellmyfire, who have already appeared on the show and will probably appear some more times in the future, I might hope. Indeed. Good day, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? What's going on your end? It's always a pleasure to be on this show.
Always is it.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll have a pleasant conversation about mainstream steampunk. Now, I already tried to elaborate what I mean with mainstream and society. So I guess the first question is, where is steampunk now from the point of view of mainstream society? In my view, there seem to be a lot of misunderstandings. I've been trying to follow the news a little bit about a new documentary called Vintage Tomorrows, which has been published last week, the 19th, if I'm not mistaken. Burt McDonald and his friend were on the show to tell us what they did during their documentary, which is basically this really elaborate project which became a book, but also a documentary that was started because of when they wrote the book. I'll put a link down in the description to that interview. Let's see, what else do we've got? Yeah, yes, what I was listening to an interview after it was published on a SoundCloud channel, I forgot the name, and here the journalist was talking about her perspective of steampunk, and she wasn't aware, for example, there was an entire music scene and stuff like that associated with steampunk. So yeah, well, what's your view on this? Who wants to start?
Well, all right, I'll go first. I live in an area of the Netherlands called Limburg, which is the southeast, and to be honest, was horrified when Carnival came around this year. Mardi Gras for everybody. Because here we have carnival pop-up shops with fancy dress costumes. And the biggest selling costumes of this year was steampunk. and it was scary looking at what people were selling and calling it steampunk. It really was just glue some gears on it and call it steampunk.
Mm-hmm.
Quote the famous song.
Right. Yeah. Who wrote that song again?
That's I'll come back to you.
I'll look it up a little later. Eric, how's your connection doing?
No, my connection is going great, so long as I don't click the wrong button.
Ah, okay. Did you hear the question, Eric?
Yeah, I know, I certainly did. And if I could just reiterate, the question is that what's going on with modern society, with steampunk, and how is it, or is it going mainstream? I think that's the gist of your question.
Yeah, well, the first one is where is steampunk now from the perspective of society?
Well, I mean, I can tell you right now, I'm not stepping on anybody else, am I? I hope that everybody else has sort of had a chance to answer this. I hope I'm not like stepping over somebody else's turn. But for me, one of the things that we enjoyed over the weekend, it was one of the things that we did this weekend to celebrate my birthday, was to go to the Market of the Moon's Renaissance Fair in Williamsburg, Massachusetts, and it really wasn't a Renaissance fair so much as it was a steampunk fair and a Victorian fantasy fair. It really didn't really have a lot to do with the Renaissance per se, but it was phenomenal because almost everybody was dressed up in diesel punk outfits, and then there were some really great costumes of mythical creatures from that region. So I think that is where it really sort of has its biggest stronghold here in the United States, whereas it's sort of like taking over Renaissance fairs. And you also see a lot of people who you're also seeing a lot of people, especially the ladies, wearing a lot more things with corsets and beautiful long dresses or gowns, and a lot of jewelry with made with old watch or clock parts. I mean, real genuine clock parts and watch parts, not just like gears that you would find just somebody hammered out in their basement. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But
go ahead.
Steampunk's home right now is majority. The majority is at the weekend Renaissance fairs here in the United States, or at least in the Northeast.
All right, it's interesting. And is it appreciated that steampunk is hijacking Renaissance fairs?
Oh, absolutely. Because the thing is that from my perspective, I keep seeing attendance levels keep increasing, and I'm seeing a lot more of the smaller fairs just grow exponentially. And a lot of people that I have spoken to, there are a lot of people who are making steampunk jewelry and clothing and costumes, and now they're able to make a decent living at it now, as before it was a hobby.
Okay.
So I think that, and the steampunk movement is really picking up steam here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And where is it from the perspective of the non-steampunk people? You know, the ordinary Joe who just happens to walk into steampunk.
I think that one of the things that are going on here in the United States is that we seem to be at a lull between style and fashion trends. I with the exception of like Pokemon Go, there really isn't any other real trend that is capturing the imagination of Americans over here. Because I'm sure that everybody remembers the 90s and the early 2000s. I mean, the rap hip hop culture sort of took over like almost every aspect of everyday life. Casual Fridays became casual attire throughout the entire work week. And right now, there really isn't any kind of like style that people are glomming onto with the exception of steampunk. You do see some people who are sort of embracing not just steampunk, but like more the
Vintage.
the punk movement from back in the 70s and 80s. That's sort of making a slow comeback more than anything else. But you are seeing a lot more Victorian and Edwardian dress in everyday life. I think that's where it's heading.
Okay.
Yes,
Frederick,
yes.
do you
Yes.
recognize that?
Yes, actually, I agree with Eric in the end statement that we see more and more people casually dressed as Victorian and Edwardian clothing. It's not a big change from one day to the next, but it came as a progression, an evolution, and since I see it since 5 years, maybe more, we see more people dressed as as Victorian or Edwardian era, and we see more and more steampunks during every kind of convention, not just science fiction or fantastic science conventions, but even during sort of medieval fairs or just fantasy fairs. We see more people dressed as steampunk, even if the conventions of the fairs are not science fiction or fantastic, but because it's about alternative universes or just imaginative universe. People come as steampunks, just a few, but they still come. While few years ago there weren't any steampunks in this kind of fairs of conventions.
Okay.
So
Andy, were you done?
No, if I can just comment on this.
Sure.
A couple of years ago, I went to a Comic-Con event, and people came up to me and said, "Which comic character are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm a steampunk." And they said, "Well, what are you doing here?"
Okay.
Recently, I went to a Comic-Con event, and people walked past and just said, "Steampunk."
Mm-hmm.
So,
Where was that when people said, "What are you doing here?" Where was that, in the Netherlands?
yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm going back, well, not only in the Netherlands, but here in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
going back 5-6 years. But
Oh, okay.
the cosplay universe was very much based on, I have the costume of a character of somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas steampunk is very much individualism.
Mm-hmm.
yes, absolutely.
One of the things that drew me to it.
Right.
Much more accepted.
Mhm.
I can walk round with a machine on my back that, to anybody with a limited amount of intelligence, would never work. But is a underwater breathing apparatus. But basically, the public and the kids love it, and that's what it's all about.
Eric, am I wrong to suggest that steampunk is much more included in the American cosplay community in where you are?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that like one of the things I had experienced is that two of our house guests are in the age of 18, and I was talking to we all call her Kat because that's short for her full name, and she was telling me about how everybody in her middle school, which is between, I think it's like the 6th and 8th grade, and everybody is showing up to school wearing the vintage style capes and hoodies and stuff like that, with a lot of like really nice embroidery and paisley prints, and just an incredible amount of middle schoolers, young adolescents are sort of incorporating more of that vintage style into their everyday wear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, this is that it's like in the 80s and 90s over here in the Northeast, but there are a lot of teens who are wearing like the aforementioned sort of hoodies. If you can kind of imagine, like the drawings of or the depictions of Little Red Riding Hood. I don't mean this as sort of any kind of pejorative at all, but this is just the best way I can paint a visual picture. Is that those kind of hoods that people were like the over-the-shoulder capes and stuff like that? That's becoming like a real thing here in the Northeast with a lot of the younger folk. I also, like I had said earlier, there are a lot of people who are getting into finding broken clocks and finding broken watches, and carefully taking them apart for the parts inside, and reusing and recycling that. I saw somebody putting this beautiful I don't even know what to call it, like a cowl, like with all these intricate gears that cover like the top hat, just the chest. And it was like, it was really breathtakingly beautiful. And the thing is that it's nothing but some wire and some recycled clock parts. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you can call it clock punk, is sort of like, it is slowly becoming very mainstream. And it's exciting for me because I'm seeing a lot of the stuff it's not being tossed into the junkyard. I'm seeing a lot of the stuff just being recycled in just new and inventive ways, with people, using them to decorate their homes or their offices or even the exteriors of their homes and buildings. And I think it's incredible. So, but the thing is I have never ever seen anybody give another person any sort of hash over dressing as a steampunk character. I don't think that there's any sort of. I've never seen it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I've never seen that kind of harassment.
No.
I've never seen anybody say, "You're dressed steampunk. You don't belong here at a Comic-Con convention. You don't belong here at a comic convention." Okay. I've never seen that. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm just saying that I have yet to see it.
Okay.
So I would be very interested to hear stories about that.
Yeah. Before we go on, I'd like to welcome Marcus to our stream. I'm not sure he muted himself right now, but I'm sure he'll get back to us in a moment.
Yeah. Hi guys. Sorry, I misclicked there. My Chrome is acting a bit weird. I've been trying to log in for the last 30 minutes, basically.
Okay. How are you doing, Marcus?
I'm quite good. I'm a bit hectic now because it took so long, but I'm fine.
Okay. Could you at least introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, because you haven't yet appeared on the show?
Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm the host of the Non-Euclidean Ethercast, where Bonsard was a guest recently. I also host the blog metapunk.com, which used to be Daily Steampunk, and I've been into retrofuturistic stuff as a main hobby interest for the past 8 years now.
Okay. Let me get back to you, Eric, to what you said about people applying the DIY aesthetic from steampunk in their daily lives, and also what you said about conventions, and the void that is in the nowadays trends. I notice a lot of people, wearing geek-related clothing, like hoodies of their favorite video game franchises or movie characters and stuff like that. And could it be that geek culture is geek culture and maybe steampunk, because it's so related to each other, is actually filling that void rather than mainstream music? Could anyone respond to that?
I think that what's sort of happened here in the United States is that there's sort of like become this attitude of like no holds barred, like anything and everything goes, especially like geek culture, and you can really sort of thank the outstanding superhero movies that are coming out of Marvel. Or you could even go back as far as in 1989, I think it was, when the first modern Batman movie spilled onto the screen. You're seeing everybody wearing comic book paraphernalia, from the nerdiest of the nerds and the dorkiest of the dorks to the most athletic jocks. You're just sort of like seeing it everywhere. And it doesn't seem to have any sign of slowing down, but I mean that's just like in t-shirt and overcoat fashion and stuff like that. But the thing is that sort of style has really sort of stagnated here in the United States, whereas it's just basically, shorts, sweats, flip-flops, t-shirts, graphic t-shirts. And that's really about it, with the exception of like maybe piercing and tattooing. That's also really sort of seen to take off. But I think the reason why all the things that I had mentioned, as far as the steampunk or the retro punk style is sort of taking hold, is because a lot of kids are also really getting into anime. And I think that everybody here can agree to an extent. Anime is very steampunk. The costumes are exceptionally steampunk, and the thing is that and a lot of what's the word I'm looking for here? A lot of cosplay for anime is really a gateway to full-blown steampunk.
Yeah, I think we should talk about anime in more depth at another time, because I also have anime is also my reason that I really got into steampunk. But maybe that's a better subject to talk about another time with some real otaku. It would be interesting to get their perspective. But let's continue about geek culture in the mainstream. Marcus, you haven't talked yet.
No.
Do you have any insights on this?
I do actually. Also from a professional point of view, because back when I'm 43 now, and like back when I like 15 years ago, if you wore a Star Wars T-shirt or a Star Trek T-shirt, everybody would basically brand you a nerd or a geek or something like that. But now, I work for one of the biggest fashion retailers in Germany, and like as of last year, we had a huge Star Wars collection, and all the others have done it too. So certain elements of geek culture are really going mainstream, and maybe for retro future stuff, it's not that pronounced yet, but at least like the little steampunk gadgets like keys and cogs and stuff, you get those in basically every DIY jewelry store these days. So this is also getting more into mainstream, and I guess the internet too does a lot of getting a geek culture more into the fore, more into people's perception, and more into the mainstream, because people have, geeks rule the world at the moment. Basically, it's like people like what's his name? The Microsoft guy, and Gates. Thanks. I'm terrible with names, and so talk show hosts like the guys from the Daily Show come out as Dungeons and Dragons fans. So it's true. It's more acceptable to be a geek, and then you can put it more into the mainstream. But also here, the the geek stuff that goes into the mainstream is already the more mainstream geek stuff. Like more people are Star Wars or Star Trek fans than retrofuturists. So this is possibly even more acceptable for the mainstream if you are like doing Star Wars stuff, because everybody knows Star Wars, a lot of people like Star Wars. But when it comes to retrofuturism, the bar might be a bit higher because fewer people are into that.
No.
Yeah, but
Yes,
Yeah, Andy, go ahead.
Marcus, if I may,
Yes.
if you look at the Dolce & Gabbana
Yes.
collection
Oh yes. Yes.
3 years ago,
Yeah.
that was unbelievably steampunk.
Yes, that was. Yes, I completely forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me. Yes.
I love what they did,
Yeah.
except for 2 points. Number one, they don't make clothes for the more generous sized figure.
Yeah.
Myself. And number two, even if they did, I can't afford €4,000 for a jacket.
Exactly. That's yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
Frederick, what's your
yes.
perception?
I'm completely agree with Marcus. It's the same thing here in France, because I remember maybe 5 years, maybe, or if we get back maybe 10 years ago, to wear some geek t-shirt. I've got plenty geek t-shirts like Silver Surfer or Hulk or Captain America, or even video games t-shirts. You were completely a freak, a nerd. Now you're totally in the move. It's very hype to claim yourself to be a geek, even if you know nothing about geek culture. But once you wear something related to geek culture, or you say you play a video game one time, or you see a Marvel movie film, you're a geek, and you're really popular for that. It's well seen, and everybody claims to love Star Wars. Since I remember maybe 15 years ago, if you said you love Star Wars or any science fiction franchise, you were just a geek and nerd. Now it's very cool to love Star Wars. There's a little exception about Star Trek. Star Trek, the reboot Star Trek made by J.J. Abrams are very popular because they are not truly Star Trek. But it's not the point. I just want to say, if you just watch all the Star Trek series, the old Star Trek, and you claim that you love it, you're still a nerd. There's something. Star Trek it's like when you say you read some Isaac Asimov novels. It's not popular. It's really for the nerds, for the hardcore one. And if you say, for example, you love Philip K. Dick, everybody knows about Philip K. Dick. But if you read Isaac Asimov, you're a nerd, because it's too deep in science fiction for mainstream people. And so to get back to the subject, to the purpose, everywhere people from who are maybe 30 or even 40 years old claims to be geeks. But for the steampunk and all related punk, even Victorian, it's a little bit different. It still has a special status. It's still something very short, very small, for something like the nerds were 15 years ago.
All right. Well, I think that's a good segue to the next question. In what parts of our society will we see steampunk expand? Anyone, any thoughts on that matter?
I think the steampunk will expand more and more. Not only with the conventions, because it's a very geeky and nerdy area domain, but once we'll get more expanse of the visual of the steampunk, if we have more steampunk movies, steampunk, we use the aesthetic of the steampunk. That in that time, steampunk will become more mainstream because the visual, it's a more popular way. It's a more easy way to get something popular. It's the fastest one. We talk about, for example, for the comics, before the Marvel movies, before Iron Man, for example, it was not so mainstream. Once Iron Man came out, and then Avengers movie, Hulk movie, everybody, now it's very popular. And I think when we will get several steampunk movies, it will begin to get very popular and mainstream then.
Okay. I would like to talk about what the catalyst will be on a later moment, but we might see steampunk develop in media and movies. Anyone else have a particular sector or domain of society where steampunk might develop?
Well, I got one for you.
Sure, Eric.
I think that one of the reasons why steampunk is going to start spilling into other areas and other venues and other genres is because there's nothing else. There's nothing else that is coming in to take its place. There is no other new. I hate to say hip and with it because I think that there's nothing hip and with it with this sort of steampunk. It is sort of some kind of its own subculture, as it were, or it's something different than the mainstream. But at the same time, I mean, it's like if you look at all the other fashion trends that had occurred over the past, I'm just going to say 40 years because that's the only experience I have. Whereas it's like you do see a lot of things like sort of like come and go, but there are some things that like still to this day remain the same. Back in the 1950s and early 60s, wearing like denim jeans was only for a certain class of people, and if you wore that, then you were a rebel, and you were a troublemaker. If you wore blue jeans and just a T-shirt, you were like a rebel without a cause. You were like a dangerous sort of James Dean kind of character. And now it's like everybody is wearing jeans and a T-shirt, and it's become mainstream. But the thing is like if you look at like sort of like something like bell bottoms, like plaid polyester bell bottoms. The reason why they're not around today is because it's very uncomfortable. It's impractical and it's ugly and it's not practical. I don't think that there's a lot of us who are jonesing to go back to that kind of style from the 60s and 70s because it was ugly then and it's ugly now. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that I think once steampunk really does sort of seem to sort of take over mainstream, I think it's going to have to do so because it is comfortable. It's the most comfortable alternative that there is out there, and like somebody else had already said here on this forum.
Yeah, well, it's the reason why I wear pants from the 40s or replicas of those pants. They're far more comfortable than modern jeans and stuff like that.
That's the reason. The reason why you do that is because I think it worked back then, so it should work now. And you can't beat cotton either. I mean, cotton is just the most versatile, beautiful fabric out there that everybody can afford. It's easy to take care of, and it breathes, especially in the summer.
Right. Okay, so we've got fashion and movies. Does anyone else have another domain of the public sector where steampunk could develop?
Well, the one thing that I have discovered, nothing to do with the fact I'm single, but going back to what was just mentioned, when a lady walks into the room and all the gentlemen will stand up, when a lady leaves a table and the gentlemen stand up. I think this is a kind of etiquette that is missing today, a respect.
Could is a steampunk educate people, you think, in that?
Oh, I think that we could learn a lot from the manners of the past.
Yeah, well, I already talked a little bit about it with Dave Lee in one of my earlier podcasts, and I think it might actually be a worth a panel unto itself. Let's see, what one of the areas I would like to see steampunk develop, or retrofuturism, is well, I looked at the new documentary Vintage Tomorrows by Burt MacDonald, who was on my show, I think, 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that stood out to me was steampunks creating machines that the youth could, experiment with. Experiment with steam engines and drive them and stuff like that. Getting children invested in technology and education and, of course, history. James Carrot also had a TED Talk on this subject, on how to use history, using steampunk as a tool to, educate people in history. It also comes along with the subject of gamification, which I hope to have someone on the show for, but unfortunately he got a migraine, but maybe, who knows, on a later episode. But that's one thing I really hope, the people in the education sector will pick up on, like, hey, this is a cool way to get kids into technology and subjects like that. Anyone have an opinion on that?
One of the things that it's like I did forget to mention that there are a lot of gateways into steampunk. I just started looking up steampunk artists, and I think her name is Lindsay Sterling. She's a violinist, and
I know
a lot of her look is very steampunkish. And I think that what has also sort of helped the steampunk movement is that I'm not sure if you guys remember this or not, but when all the Jane Austen novels became all the rage with Sense and Sensibility, the Emma Thomas movie that was released, that really sort of I think that really sort of kicked off the return to the Victorian and Edwardian aesthetic. And then, of course, you throw in Doctor Who. I think that Doctor Who is very much a very sort of steampunk science fiction adventure. And when that returned to the BBC and the public consciousness, and it just took off. And there is that sort of there is that Victorian Edwardian look. So I think that dieselpunk or steampunk or just retrofuturism is seeping into the mainstream. I think mostly because of those right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there's no denying it that steampunk is very much inspired by pop culture, especially in the United States. While in Europe, it seems to be, well, of course, it takes a lot of modern media, but it seems to be, very much apart from the cosplay for some reason. That's maybe because our festival culture is different, I suspect. But yeah, absolutely, steam media will affect its popularity, and as it becomes more accepted by mainstream media through whatever, more people will be inspired by it, and maybe that way, people from educators and technicians will pick up on it. Which brings me to something that Gary Nichols reminded me of in his last podcast, which is a very interesting podcast, which I really advise you should watch. Gary Nichols is working on this wonderful photo album, a trilogy, and his first book is out now. You can pre-order it. I did it, and yeah, it's wonderful. And also, he has a great vision. But back to the subject, he reminded me that I don't know how it has progressed. I posted a link to an interview with one of the actors, but Steven Spielberg is working on a steampunk series right now. I forgot what the name was. I would have to look it up. But if that series is successful, it could change a lot, I think. You know,
Yes.
when someone like Steven Spielberg makes something, you know, that's incredible.
No, surely, if it gets popular, it will, as you say, it will change it will change everything in the way people know about steampunk.
Mm-hmm.
What about Warehouse 13?
No, not Warehouse 13. Lumen, it is called. And an actor named Neil Jackson will be playing in it. I have a link on it in my Facebook group. And Gary Nichols reminded me of it last week. And it's it's a series, and it's basically about, I think, a resistance movement in a steampunk world.
No, I was just saying that we have had TV shows about steampunk.
Yeah, Warehouse 13 is very much inspired by steampunk. I think it also says a lot about the psychology of steampunks. However, the thing with Warehouse 13, that it's enjoyable but very pulpy. You know, it doesn't have the meat that such a series requires. It doesn't have like the lore, or it does have a lore, but it's rather disjointed. And really.
If we were to go back to the original subject of the discussion,
Yeah, let's do that.
what happens if it becomes mainstream?
Mm-hmm.
We've had steampunk movies, Wild Wild West. I mean, for me, the first steampunk movie I ever came across, Back to the Future 3. I mean, the guy had a
Yeah. Okay.
powered
ahead.
by a steam train.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got TV series like Warehouse 13, which are very steampunk orientated. How much further into mainstream do we have to go before it's decided that steampunk is mainstream?
Well, like I tried to point out with things like Warehouse 13, you know, one of the reasons why series like Supernatural or Game of Thrones or mainstream games like Warhammer are so successful is because of the lore. You know, people love the lore and talk about it and discuss it, and you know, you know, the same goes for superheroes. Like, and people will discuss why they don't agree with certain choices they made in the superhero movies because, you know, the lore and whatever. And I think steampunk really lacks that. You know, it really lacks a protagonist, so to speak. It doesn't have, let's say, an Iron Man or a Spider-Man or a Doctor Who. I think steampunk really needs such a heroic figure.
Yes, a list of strong characters which people could identify themselves or refer.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, like a few years back, you had the game Dishonored. Right now, they're working on part 2 of that game. But although it's a good game, the story was too weak. I never seen anyone. I never seen a Corvu cosplay. You know, because he was he wasn't a character. He was a gimp, a silent gimp, and and then there are just no steampunk characters that are iconic enough to be to
to
attract attention.
Yes, to gather the unconsciousness of the culture of people, to bring together the minds of people who knows it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You've got like old Warhammer, you've got like multiple channels all discussing the lore.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what steampunk is missing. A series that is really about the characters. The thing I see with steampunk media is that it's very focused on the fact it's steampunk. What is the series? Yes, it's a steampunk series. And they don't talk about the themes that go beyond that. It's like, yeah, it's steampunk, and everybody's, wow, there's going to be a steampunk series, and there's but what is it about? What kind of characters can we expect? I think that's something that's really lacking.
Yes, I agree with you. It's always focused on the fashion and the technology, and the all around the characters, but not the characters.
Mm-hmm. And I also think it has something to do with the fact that steampunks really want to immerse themselves in a world.
Yes.
They want to recreate the world that doesn't exist. They want to create a world around them. I think I'm a very good example of that for anyone who has seen pictures of my house.
Yes.
But that doesn't appeal to everyone. Some people just want a symbol, so to speak, and I think steampunk needs a symbol. That's what I'm getting at.
Yes, an avatar.
So to speak, yes.
Yes, exactly. Some kind of herald.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a Steampunk-Jesus figure, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely.
Some character that embellishes the very spirit of steampunk, and kind of like, Dr. Steele was that, I suppose, and the closest thing we've got is, I think, Professor Elemental, when I think about it.
Yes, pretty well.
So anyone else has an opinion on that?
I was going to say me, and
of course, but you
said we needed some kind of Jesus, and I really don't want to get nailed to a tree.
In fact, we have several ones. We have you, we have the Dave, we have Joey Mazzocchi.
Don't be an arsehole.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we already got a catchphrase here on the show, basically.
I wear steampunk in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And I wear steampunk in the street because I pick up on the Steampunk World Fair, which I am very happy to be part of next year, that says, shit, I can't solve the world's problems, but if my cogs and my stupidity can go out and make at least one person smile,
exactly,
then it's all been worthwhile.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And I think that's probably one of the magic why steampunk. Let's talk about the appeal of steampunk, because I wanted to do that anyway. Why do people accept steampunk? And one of the things is it has a lot of recognizable features, like everybody knows what an old typewriter looks like, and everybody knows steam trains. So people already understand that context. So that makes the fantasy part about it a lot more acceptable. And you've got all the moving parts, and moving parts simply fascinate. Yes. That's the difference between steam engines and like a modern mobile phone. I mean, you have this extremely complicated wonder of technology that is our mobile phone these days. I mean, that's 2,000 years of technology, if not more.
Yes.
You know, it's incredible. And then you've got like a steam engine. That was like, when was the first steam engine invented? First century BC. You know, and what did they use it for? To entertain kids, basically. And that's what we're doing with it now. It's quite incredible when you think about it like that. But you know, the parts are moving. People understand how the machine works.
Yes, they can see it.
Exactly. They can, you know, it's kind of like a Rubik's Cube, only
Yes.
it makes more sense than the Rubik's Cube in my.
There's some kind of interaction between the machinery and the people.
Exactly. Marcus, we haven't heard from you for a while. What are your thoughts on the appeal of steampunk? Marcus? I don't think he can hear us.
Well, while Marcus is unmuting his mic, if I may, one of the appeals of steampunk that I've discovered is the Victorian return to values.
Okay.
If a lady enters the room and the gentlemen stand up, if a gentleman enters the room and removes his hat, I think that the public, or shall we say the normals as we call them, really appreciate this. I mean, I've had guests at events that when the lady has walked in the room, all of the gentlemen stand up when she joins the table.
Right.
It's a sign of respect and values that has been lost today.
Yeah, I can see
People
that.
I know that really love steampunk, and they're not into wearing a corset or goggles or gluing cogs to.
Ooh. Marcus, could you mute your mic? Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. But you know, it's with the etiquettes. It's like you know,
Marcus's mic kicked.
Yeah, he has muted himself, fortunately. But
when you get a lady that walks into a room and every gentleman stands up, the ladies appreciate this.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those. I think it's one of those universal languages, you know. That common courtesy.
We have lost in modern society. We just don't do it, and I think it's a shame.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have not. You know, my parents really taught me that kind of thing. I think parents don't teach that anymore.
This is just a part of what, for me, steampunk is about. It is the respect, the politeness, that if we were to go back to the late 19th century, early 20th century, that we don't have anymore.
I will go far and say this, is that I think that everybody here is in agreement that there is something really missing from modern society, and it's not just so much politeness, as it were. I think that one of the appeals to steampunk to so many other people is that it's the punk aspect of it, as far as bucking societal norms. And the thing is that we're bucking societal norms now by being more polite, and we're being rebellious by being more concerned about our manners, being more concerned about the people around us, and we're bucking the trend by doing following the old adage, treat others as you wish to be treated. And it was like, it really makes people day. I'm going to tell. I mean, because the thing is that when I see somebody who is serving me, whether it is at the local coffee shop or at the grocery store, and I see their name tag, I refer to those people by their name. It's not just, they're not, that is somebody who is real. That is somebody who deserves respect, and they deserve to be treated not as an underling, but as an actual friend. Mm-hmm. And you will notice how that pays back to you in ways you cannot possibly imagine. And I'm not saying do it because you're going to get something else in return. But the thing is that the world is a better place around me because I'm nicer to you. And you are happy to see me. My life is better because people know me at the local grocery store. And I no matter how awful somebody is behaving, I never snap at them unless they're being violent or borderline violent. Then I got to put them in their place.
Right. Exactly.
But the thing is that it's not about being a pussy, and it's not about being a pushover. It's about being strong while at the same time being polite. And the thing is, you look at all the horrible things that are going on in the news right now, and and whether it's local news or global news, there's a lot of awful things going on out there. And the thing is that why don't we some of the Victorian values? I'm not saying subjugate women and minorities. I'm saying let's return to the original values that made the world a better place. Where it's like, if your neighbor is is in need, help your neighbor. If you see a stranger who seems to be having car trouble, stop and offer help. And the thing is that what we're talking about, we're looking for retro-futuristic heroes. Here's a great idea. Why don't you be that hero? We don't need another Superman. What we need is a you. We need you, whoever is listening. We need you to be the hero and step up and say, I'm not going to be a part of the problem, I'm going to be the solution. And I'm going to be a better person. And by being a better person, if that means being a steampunk and acting Victorian and Edwardian, awesome.
Right. Right. Well, I think that's a very good one. And the funny thing is that my next question is, what sectors will benefit most from a retro-futuristic approach? And I'm kind of surprised to hear, the whole social aspect is now coming so much to the front. Marcus, are you with us again? I hear something, but no, I don't think. Let's see. But yeah.
I mean, if I can just echo what has just been said,
right,
by Eric. I
Thank you.
think that as steampunks, we have a social obligation to stand up and say, no, we do not agree with the way current society is going, and we agree that standing up and giving your seat to a lady or somebody who is physically impaired, or just being nice to people, I mean, walking down the street, lifting your hat and saying, hello, how are you? I hope you have a nice day, does so much for the other person, even if they don't know why we're doing it, or even if it's just because we believe it is the correct thing to do as steampunks.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting, and my mind is starting to spin, like, how can you turn this into a kind of, apolitical form of activism? Because, the whole, a lot of politicians will say, well, we have to return to the old values. So when you say things like that, it's really important to separate it from political messages. Can't we do something like that on conventions, Just a simple play or workshop to demonstrate proper values, to be more pleasant to people, or just things to people can take into account, which should be obvious, but apparently aren't always as obvious as we'd like them to be. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, for me, you're making...
No, buddy, you're making...
Bonsa, you have...
Go ahead, buddy.
Oh, two people are speaking right now. Andy, you start.
Okay, Bonsa, you're making complete sense. You have been to one of my high teas.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What a lovely way to sit down at an event and just say, when a photographer turns up, we say, excuse me, tea. And then walk away.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, people that don't know the steampunk culture, they've walked around these events and just been, their mind has been blown by the costumes, the outfits, the gadgets and everything. And then at a certain moment say, will you sit down and have tea with us?
Right.
There are some nice sandwiches, there is tea, and it's just polite conversation, the way that tea should be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going back to what people want. For me, this is the way I understand it.
Right. Eric, you wanted to say something?
Well, the thing is that I think that what you have to say is a really good thing. Whereas, it's like you're asking, well, how can we turn this into a movement? I don't think you can, because it's already happened. It's already started. The only thing we can do now is just keep it moving along and just keep contributing to it. The thing is that when we were at the Ren Fair, we were surrounded by the nicest, friendliest, courteous people you could possibly imagine. And here's the thing: it wasn't fake. It wasn't fake in the slightest bit. And now it's like I got the bug. Now I'm looking for the next Renaissance Festival. And I don't think that I really sort of got that sort of like those good vibrations
Right.
From any kind of science fiction convention or Comic-Con. So I'll yield the floor.
Right. Marcus, can you...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Sorry, but because I had to restart everything, what was the last question you asked?
Well, we started to wander a little bit off into, bringing back old values, so to speak, and how what sectors of society. The original question was which sectors of society will benefit most. And we wandered off into, the the idea of Victorian politeness, so to speak.
Right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sure, Frederick.
Yep.
Excuse me. Just, I'm very sorry. I've got to go. In fact, I'm very sorry. I've got a little remark. I've got to go. I'm sorry, gentlemen. It was very nice, but I'm really sorry.
No problem. Goodbye, Frederick. We'll speak some other moment.
I'm very sorry. Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Good evening, gentlemen.
But coming back to the question, I don't know if it's actually going to develop into this direction, but for me personally, I think education could benefit a lot from the steampunk mindset.
I agree with you.
Yeah, because right now, education is very much geared towards what the economy needs.
Mm-hmm.
But there's very little appreciation for the arts or just for the joy of discovery. Like
Right.
you do the sciences in order to achieve a certain goal, like to become a good engineer. But you do not do the sciences in order to just discover and gain knowledge, or you do arts and crafts in order so you can build a table to certain standards, but you're not being taught to actually turn this table into a piece of art.
Right.
And this is also something that bores students to tears, because they always have to basically go from A to B without any detours. There's no place for art of any sort in education. I think if we put some steampunk mindset into there, we get some positivity, we get some spirit of adventure, and we get some art, and through that we could actually make education more attractive to the children.
I agree, and I'm starting to imagine a history teacher presenting himself as a Victorian gentleman, telling about
absolutely.
From like a Victorian gentleman would, so to speak, and educating his students in politeness and just being overall a pleasant person.
Yeah.
That's would be amazing, and I think the students would not just be invested in history, but also polite behavior in general.
Yes.
Though any of the other people have an opinion on education.
Well, I mean, I'm not in education. I'm a manager in an office supplies company. I wear steampunk in the office.
Right. Yeah, so do I, basically.
Those of you that are friends of mine on Facebook will have seen what I wore in the office last week. I wore a 19th century bathing costume.
Sorry, I missed it. What kind of costume? A bathing costume.
19th century bathing costume.
Excellent. Excellent.
Last Friday in the office at the company barbecue, because the theme was a day at the beach, so it had to be the red and white striped t-shirt and shorts with the straw boater hat. But at the same time, every person that came up, I was polite. If it was a woman, I stood up. I offered them my chair. I did everything that I thought etiquette asked for.
Right.
And the rest of my team, I hope, are learning from me that this is, even though it's 150 years ago, the way that we should move forward.
I agree.
Right.
Well, I want to have a... Oh, sure. Eric, go ahead.
Well, one thing that I want to add is that it's like if you want to see change in the world, you have to become that change. I know that sounds like a cliche. I know that it's been borrowed so many times, but the thing is that it was just like, if you want everybody to dress up or just dress better, you go first. If it's so important to you, then why don't you do it? And it's like the thing is like if you want to talk about educating kids, and the thing is that start with your kids at home, or start with your kids in your immediate family. And the thing is that don't be afraid to introduce them to history, because here's the thing, folks: if history is boring, you're doing it wrong.
Absolutely.
History has the greatest stories about, and I hate, it has sex and violence, and it has intrigue, it has heroism, and it has betrayals, and it has everything. And the reason why Shakespeare's work survives today is because he taught history through poetry and through poetic verses. That's the ticket right there. If you're bored and you don't want to hear anything about World War II history, you're missing out.
Yeah. The thing is, Eric, I've got... Sorry?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I've got some... I used to be a teacher. And in Bavaria. And the thing is, they do it by the book, and the book is 50 years old. And it's absolutely terrifying. I mean, I remember I had one lesson where that was basically graded, where basically someone came in and they would look if I was being a good teacher. And I basically did all the things that I described, like making it interesting. It was actually a mixed English and economy lesson. And I got a standing ovation from the students afterwards. And the guy who graded me said that was a complete disaster because it wasn't by the book. And So if you are like one person who wants to change something, you get removed from the system, which is the reason why I'm not a teacher anymore.
Right.
So we need more steampunks in teaching in order for that to work.
Okay. Let's use that as a segue. What is going to be the catalyst? We already talked about movies, but could there be other catalysts to how we can, promote steampunk or push it into the mainstream?
I only have one word. Us. That's it. If it's going to happen, it has to be with us.
True.
If we see something, if we see something steampunk related and it's good and it's worthy, buy it and promote it. Promote it on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. It has everything to do with us. If whether or not retrofuturism passes or fails, it's us. It's all of us. It's the four of us here talking, and it's everybody listening. It's us. I'll yield the floor.
Okay, Marcus, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'd say art, or installations or anything, because that's something I noticed. Steampunks don't attract haters from the general populace, but their art attracts admirers. And the more we go into the fore with those, if we go to maker fairs or just to anywhere, if we go into schools, if we go just make some exhibition somewhere, we attract people and get them interested. It's a slow process, but I think this will definitely work. I mean, it worked every time when I was there, when there was an arts display, especially Tesla coils are always a big draw.
Yeah, last time when I was in Germany, Andy, you must have seen it too, was the Tesla coil playing 8-bit video game tunes.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, it's not Tesla coils. One of my favourite tricks, I buy them from China. Simple disc magnets, batteries and copper wire. You attach the magnet to the battery. You get the kids to make a spiral out of the copper wire with a point on the top. And then when they put them all together, the copper wire spins.
Oh.
Yes.
This is the most basic electric motor.
Huh?
I love it. And I normally start with the kids because, I live in the Netherlands. I do a lot of events in Germany. My German is very bad because when I lived in Germany, and I think Marcus might appreciate this, I lived in Stuttgart. Dus
right.
Ich kann alles außer Hochdeutsch.
Yes, exactly.
So I do it through mime. I show the kids how to do this. Now, normally when I start, I've got 4 or 5 kids on the table. By the time I've finished, I've got 15 to 16 fathers that have pushed the kids out of the way because they want to do it. I want to teach kids the wonders of science. I mean, I've got hats that work from the heat of my own head and all this kind of things. There's no batteries involved. I want to get kids away from building things in Minecraft and building things with their hands.
Yes.
That's my passion.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll probably talk a little bit more about science in steampunk with Marcus next week on Radio Retro Future. But the promotion of science is probably very important, and I really hope that steampunk will renew its role in that area, in a more mainstream way, like in education, for that reason. Let's see, but it's just okay. I have to cut here. Right. Sorry, gentlemen. We are reaching the end of our panel. We're almost 90 minutes in, so it's a good time. What have we learned from this panel, Andy? Have you learned something new today?
Yeah, I've learned that steampunk in Germany, France, the US, we have the same values, we have the same principles, we've got the same things that we would like to promote to the normals, as we call them over here. But I would also like to open a question to everybody that listens to this now or later.
Mm-hmm.
Please contact us and ask, or a challenge for you, or a challenge for us. What do you think cannot be steampunked, and what do you think should not be steampunked? I'm going to answer this already from my point of view. I don't want to see in steampunk any isms. Fascism, racism, sexism, etc. Because I use steampunk as my escape to get away from the shit of everyday life. I don't want to see it coming into steampunk. So yeah, steampunk is my escapism. I love it. I love the opportunity to be nice, polite to people, but I'd also like to hear what other people think. Anyway,
Okay.
that's my thoughts. End of thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. Let's focus on the panel for now, and Eric and Marcus can answer the question. But Eric, have you learned something new today?
No, I think that the most important thing to realize here is that we're really not alone, and that the reason why so many of us gravitate towards retroism is because we are yearning for maybe things weren't always great or perfect, decades ago or generations ago. But the thing is I think everybody here wants to bring back the style and the values, the positive values from that era, and the thing is that we need to be each other's biggest cheerleaders. We need to form a support system and really sort of make this movement by supporting each other, by saying, you guys are important to me because of everything that I just had mentioned, because we are all sort of part of this huge international team trying to bring something back. And if it never existed, then we're trying to bring something wonderful back. And but we're all on the same team, all of us. It's not just Team America Steampunk. It's not Team Belgium Spunk or whatever. This is truly an international community with world-changing goals, and I think that's beautiful.
Okay, Marcus, you any closing statements?
Yeah, I mean, I was something that I learned was that the two people who spoke before me already said that that we all have the same ideas, because like up to now I was always sort of under the impression that like every country has a sort of slightly different interpretation of what steampunk is, but here we all agreed. So yeah, so it's we basically all want to pull it on the same strings in order to change things, and this is this is something that really motivates me again to do more for steampunk and retrofuturism in general, because obviously there are a lot of people out there who think the same stuff that I think, and who want to do the same things that I want, and want to change the same things that I want to change. So that's great.
Thank you for watching this episode of Radio Retro Future. If you really enjoyed this episode, a like would be greatly appreciated, and if you want to remain posted on our next episodes, please subscribe to our channel. Furthermore, if you really want to help us grow, please consider donating to our Patreon. $1 a month would help us a long way to keep doing what we're doing. If you want to be an official sponsor of the show, that would also be greatly appreciated. If you have any questions or requests, please contact us to the social media links down below. Thank you for your support.